The dark secrets of the Kakin Empire have been revealed. Borkson is a Nen specialist, Morena is also a specialist, however she is not Morena, and martial law has finally been called. You know, considering that 99% of this chapter was a card game, we had a rather shocking amount of things happen, including what I think is one of the most horrific images that Togashi has ever put to page. And it's kind of wild that he was even allowed to include this in Weekly Shonen Jump. But we begin the negotiation game with Morena asking Borkson a question about why she chose the initial card, which was rather unexpected, considering the emphasis on time pressure in the last chapter. However, we do discover that this time pressure is purely on Borkson, as at any time Mr. Dogman could discover a new specialist to recruit, thus making Borkson quite expendable. But Borkson does play this initial round quite cleverly and establishes that Morena has less than 50 subordinates. From Morena's body language alone, Borkson establishes that Morena probably has about less than half of 50, which is pretty smack bang on the money, and it really shows me that question A and question B, probably weren't the right choice for Borkson. I was wrong. However, I will also say that this particular example isn't very strong because Borkson does get an exact answer to Morena's numbers later through the explanation of her ability, although to be fair, Borkson could not have known that, so it was still a very clever thing to do. But Borkson's first choice is the aim card, which I think is very reasonable. I said in my previous video that that's the one that I would likely select first. However, Morena is initially less than helpful with her answer. I guess it's more because it's such a grand ambition, because she states that her aim is to destroy the Kakin Empire and then escalate that into a project of destroying humanity. I do find it interesting that Morena specified humanity because during her introduction, I was led to believe that she despised every aspect of the world. And so mental collage contained not just human evils, but a lot of harsh truths about nature, natural disasters, and how brutal that this world can be to all life. I mean, maybe it's just a 3-step plan. Step 1, destroy the Kakin Empire. Step 2, destroy all of the humanity. And then step 3, destroy the world as a whole, because why not? There's a part I absolutely love though when Morena is surprised that Borkson needs further clarification of this ambition, as if she won over all of her other allies with just that vague explanation. And you know what, from what we find out later, she probably did. I just thought this was a very cute moment. And there's a lot of cute Morena moments in this chapter. Togashi has very much gone out of his way to depict her as an outwardly lovely presence. However, my favorite panel of the chapter is actually this close-up where that facade breaks and Togashi draws Morena's eyes in the most unkind way possible, as if she's viewing Borkson as meat, which will make sense in a bit. Her face gets noticeably uglier in general in this panel. More lines are formed and they're not pleasant lines, they're very disturbing lines. Quite unsettling, as if her eyes and the rest of her face is starting to contort into a more demonic presence. And that right there is a glimpse of the true Morena. I mean, I can't even say that actually. It's a glimpse of the truth of whoever or whatever this being is. Because that's a pretty damn massive twist in this chapter, the fact that Morena isn't even Morena, and the real Morena Prudhoe is long dead and buried in the grave intended for the person that we see before us. So just exactly who is this woman? A question that we will answer shortly, because guess who has a problem? That's right, it's me. It's always me. It's my wife's birthday this month, and I've spent far too much time talking about fictional hunters to source a gift. So if I want to stay married, and that would be the most appealing option, then I'm gonna have to fix this. And the solution is the sponsor of today's video, Holzkern, practically a specialist in saving my marriage through their phenomenal range of products made from natural materials such as wood, stone, and an assortment of shiny metals. I challenge you to find a single person who does not love at least one of those things. So here's what it did, right? I got the love of my life an aquarelle necklace as well as a matching aquarelle bracelet, and mate did it work. But look, don't take my word for it. I'm just a man on the internet. Instead, let's listen to this compelling testimony.
Oh, hello. Thanks to Holzkern, my husband is no longer a disappointment.
That's actually my wife, and this was an actual problem that Holzkern helped me solve. And Holzkern can do exactly the same for you with its wide range of watches, rings, necklaces, bandlets, sunglasses, and more. Just click the link in the description to save up to 30% off site-wide in their biggest sale of the year for a limited time only. And while you're there, you may as well pick up something for yourself because you have earned it. Like I did with this stunning watch called the Substantial, which makes me feel substantially more suave whilst wielding it. And everything comes packaged in this delightful little box within a box sort of situation to double the exhilarating thrill of the unboxing experience, which you can achieve to you and your loved ones by clicking the link in the description and saving up to 30% site-wide for a limited time. So definitely check them out, but for now it's back to you, me. I have to say I love this Morena twist because it gives this figure such mystique. To me, Morena is no longer a person, but more of an undefined entity, because any identity that she had has now been completely stripped away, and now what we're left with is this nameless demon conjured by the crimes of the Kakin Empire. And I guess we should talk about said crimes, because every now and then the Kakin Empire decides to hold a special carnival or festival or other named event that we'll only have properly defined with the official translation. But this event takes place in a randomly selected village who are forced to host the Kakin royalty. The citizens are then divided into two groups, one of which being those who serve all the entertainers, and the other vaguely defined others / etc. Again, we'll have to wait for the official translation on that, because right now the online translators seem to disagree on exactly what this term is. But look, I'm trying to think of a YouTube-friendly term for this, because one of my Hunter x Hunter videos recently got age restricted because I mentioned a certain act that occurred in Hunter x Hunter. So for now, let's call this festival an event of mass non-consensual intercourse, because the Kakin royalty forces every person in the village that they fancy into serving them. And being realistic here, that's probably not just restricted to sexual activity, because knowing royals like Cyrenik, I would imagine that there's quite a bit of assorted body horror happening at these festivals as well. But look, the results speak for themselves, quite literally. As about, 9 months after every festival, oh my god, there's a mass birthing of these seeds that were forcibly planted. We're talking like a whole village of children just spawning. And it's also specified that any form of contraception or abortion is considered blasphemy among royals. So these women are forced to carry the children, which you can actually see in Morena's introduction. We see her reminiscing about being born, and her mother is restrained in a hospital bed. And these children are then taken by the Haley family, the same family that Morena is now the head of, and they are then inducted into the underworld. And here they're separated into two groups. The Kakin Empire, mate, they love their two groups. There's the ones who are officially recognized as illegitimate children who are groomed for leadership within the mafia factions in the underworld, and then there's the very bleak designated role for everyone else simply called meat, which has also been translated as flesh, but until the official comes out, I'm gonna go with meat, because to accompany this, Togashi has drawn one of the most visceral visual metaphors that I have ever seen, with the knife cutting into a very vaginal piece of meat. And our Morena, of course, was designated as meat. So the way I take this image is to mean that every bad thing you think could have happened to Morena short of murder almost certainly did happen to her. And the whole concept of meat also makes a lot of sense with Contagion, because this game views humans as meat to be farmed, as sustenance for the family, which is why the Haley family have set up their own meat factory. It's all based on Morena's experience. And look, this festival isn't some old barbaric ritual that we did in the past either, because the most recent one was 2 years ago, which was around the same time that Hunter x Hunter began, and Gon officially left Whale Island to begin his optimistic journey to find his father. Which means that a lot of the older princes, and maybe some of the younger ones, likely participated in the most recent festival, which definitely makes me rethink a lot of the princes that I've come to appreciate more over time. Like Benjamin, for example. I don't agree with his methods, but I do appreciate his commitment to the ideal of patriotism, because at least he's got some substance there. However, considering that these festivals are Kakin tradition, then the pure patriotic thing to do would be to support them, and I don't like that. I always say that Hunter x Hunter is a very unique manga for many reasons, and one of those reasons is because from time to time, Togashi can make me feel genuinely physically ill. And the more I think about this festival, the worse it gets. And I also have to say that Morena's general existence is starting to remind me a lot of Gyro. Gyro was the young boy who was born in the worst possible corner of this planet and experienced so much of the darkness of humanity that he resolved to completely cast his humanity aside and adopts the ambition of spreading evil throughout the world. Morena has a similar upbringing, but she hasn't quite landed on the same solution. In fact, she almost serves as an antithesis to Gyro, because Morena is all about spreading love. It's even in her ability name, Contagion, Etude of Love. And later in the chapter during the power explanation, we expand on this parent-child dynamic that was brought up in the last chapter, as Morena equates Contagion to raising a family and supporting her children, so that they can go on to raise families of their own. With each of Morena's children having their own unique goal, Morena, the parent, her pet goal is to destroy the Kakin Empire, and of course her children are going to help her do that. But assumedly, once this goal is complete, each of the children will be level 100 member zeros and go on to form their own families to accomplish their goals. When they leave the nest, so to speak. And when you don't think about all of the killing and such, it's actually quite sweet. But even though they found different solutions, Morena and Gyro are still very similar, specifically in regards to their charisma and their ability to win allies over to their cause. Now, we never properly met Gyro, which was purposeful because Togashi wanted to obscure any and all signs of humanity, but Ikalgo and Welfin during their human days had such a profound belief in Gyro, which is very odd considering how well we got to know and like them. But I think the Haley family are very much the same. They all hold quite a bit of reverence for Morena, their parent. And so they're not just a bunch of assorted psychos in a room. They're a family, and that kind of bond is extremely strong and even more dangerous. And part of me does wonder if Morena is Togashi carrying out some of the ideas that he originally intended to explore with Gyro, but seeing what time was realistically left with Hunter x Hunter, he decided to maybe repackage them a bit. Something very, very cool, however, is that it appears that Morena naturally discovered and cultivated her own nen use, which is on par with, if not outright surpasses, the nen geniuses who unconsciously use it without realizing it. Speaking of power though, after aim, Boxen selects the power card. And Morena adorably blushes when Boxen selects power because Boxen is taking an interest in her specifically, having now asked about Morena twice in a row. And I don't think this is an act. I think this is a genuine emotion, because having grown up as meat or flesh, Morena probably isn't used to anyone taking an interest in her beyond her body. However, this is also where Morena gets a little bit tricky because she's being very sneaky about this game. Because the way that Morena explained Contagion very conveniently left out how players level up. And Boxen also realizes that Morena has taken advantage of her by making sure that hearing about either aim or power would require her to select the other card to get a complete picture. So this game is almost like a magic trick. Morena is doing her best to force Boxen's choice. But through this, we discover that, as suspected, Boxen is a specialist, which means that Boxen now joins a very short list of characters. And for the first time, Morena actually gives us a solid number as to just how rare specialists are in the Hunter x Hunter world. According to Morena's own research and estimation, 1 in every 3,000 people is born as a natural specialist. However, I should say that this is not to be taken as 100% reliable information. This is very much like Hisoka's Nen personality test. It's very intriguing, but it is complete pseudoscience. And for most other series, I would say that a situation like this is the author trying to convey information to the readers, and that we should take it quite seriously. However, hey, this is Togashi, and he loves to lie to readers quite blatantly based on what his characters would realistically know, and also how their deranged mind brains would have interpreted that knowledge. So I'd consider this statistic maybe a rough, good general idea, but an unproven guide at best. And there are currently only 12.5 characters who fall into the specialization category in Hunter x Hunter, including Morena herself, which is revealed in this chapter, the half of course being Kurapika, and Boxen now makes this 13.5 specialists. And now I'm not gonna go and say something audacious like every specialist in Hunter x Hunter has irrevocably changed the series, because specialists like Hina and Leol do exist who are a bit underwhelming. However, the vast majority of specialists that we encounter do have a commanding impact on every event that they're involved in. So commanding that even the smallest drawing of Specialist Crawler in this chapter as Dogman sniffs him out is one of the most exciting panels in the entire chapter, because it exudes that horrifying potential that the Haley may have their sights set on him. And you know, I don't think a team up is entirely out of the question. Morena has said that what unites her family members is killing various different targets and circumstances and methods, but the general bond is killing. And that's currently something that Crawler can get on board with, because his sole aim at the moment is to kill Hisoka. He is willing, and I think at least half expects to die whilst achieving this. And as a side note, I also love the explanation of Contagion being a hybrid of every Nen affinity, as well as Morena stating that a pitfall of specialization is that sometimes specialists never reach their full potential because they master one affinity and they think they belong to that one and become overly reliant on it with very little attention paid to the other 4. So there's actually an argument to be made that not only is Morena one of the best specialists we've ever met, but considering that she has balanced all 5 other Nen affinities to create Contagion, she could be one of the best Nen users we've ever met in general. Because I don't think I've seen another single ability that maximizes every affinity like this. But following this, Boxen selects the no card, which is guided by Morena, again kind of forcing Boxen's choice. But as suspected, the no is considered a declaration of intent, a rejection that in the eyes of the Haley family mean that Boxen and friends of Boxen are just meat to be farmed and points to be gained. loudly and proudly stating no is taken by Morena as Boxen stating her intent to be an enemy. However, if the X card is chosen, then the game is null and void and Boxen will be released, but not only that, Morena will also do her best not to bother Boxen and the people close to her. Although this is described as more of a delaying of their deaths because again, the goal is to rid the world of humanity. You're gonna need to get around to them eventually. But we also have what I think is confirmation that the negotiation game is definitely a Nen ability in this chapter because vows and limitations are mentioned. And this game contains a chance that the target will be able to walk away completely unharmed, and not only that, but equipped with all of the information given by Morena throughout the game. That is a very high risk, but as a result, it provides a very high reward. Because in exchange for that, if Boxen does end up selecting yes, then this will boost both Boxen's eventual ability as well as Morena's ability to support that eventual ability. Because Morena had to overcome the risk of her plan getting out there into the world and her being powerless to stop it, and Boxen had to overcome the potential risk of death. Now, with all of that said, the negotiation game is likely not Morena's ability, and if I had to guess, I'd say that it was Gelato's because they were the ones talking about it together, which would be very sneaky, because by using someone else's ability, Morena doesn't have to explain the specifics of the negotiation game with the power card, and she wouldn't ever unless Boxen selected question A and question B to ask about it, but now that's impossible. Boxen only has one more chance to gain information before her choice is made. And during this chapter, Boxen has discarded the Joker, yes, and X, so right now she is only left with return and no, essentially meaning that Boxen right now has a 50-50 chance of dying. Even if she wanted to join the Haley family purely for the sake of survival, and even though that's what Morena wants, there's a 50% chance that that's just not up to either of them. If Boxen ends up discarding the return card on the next round, then we could consider this a loss for both Boxen and Morena. I mean, more of a loss for Boxen though, because of the life business. However, there is still hope remaining because during the next round, Boxen could select the dealer card to return one of her answer cards from the graveyard, which I have to imagine would be the X. However, we still risk ending up in the same situation because the chances are that either X or return will be discarded, and there's only a 1 in 3 chance that the no would be discarded. However, whether or not we're actually going to see the end of the negotiation game in this batch is now very much in question, because this chapter ends with a ship-wide announcement of martial law being enacted, assumedly by Prince Benjamin or perhaps by Hulkenberg acting as Benjamin, but either way, this seems like a prime opportunity to cut away from the negotiation game and catch up with what's been happening on Tier 1, because what's currently been happening are Krapika's Nen classes, Hulkenberg's plot, as well as Melody, Kaiser, and Katrobe's assassination plan, and so much more. I want to be very clear about this. For martial law to have been enacted this quickly, something massive must have happened. Because it's not just a snap decision, it needs to go through the courts, it needs to pass through the Kakin judicial system. So for it to have happened this quickly means that we have missed something huge while we've been playing this card game. And I would imagine that it has to be the death of one of the princes, specifically one of the mafia benefactors, meaning that we may have lost either Zangle, Saridnik, or Luzerus. And we're going to examine exactly what's more likely to have happened in the next video.